Funding for Schaefer-Ellis is provided by
Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video. Just when you thought these Star Wars ranking videos couldn't get any stupider. Never underestimate me. Let's talk about one of the most glorious aspects of the Star Wars physical media releases. If you're old like me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the Star Wars DVD menus are incredible. I'm nostalgic for a lot of DVD menus. They can get really creative with the way they're formatted and how they allow you to select your preferred options. But the Star Wars DVDs are on an entirely different level. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about any recent re-releases. I mean the original DVD runs of the prequel trilogy and the 2004 DVD releases of the original trilogy. Picture this. You boot one of these babies up and you're bombarded with the iconic Star Wars logo that also features 4 different scenes from the movie at a time within the logo's letters. Okay, that's pretty cool. It then transitions into gold as the Roman numeral for the movie you're watching appears behind the logo. And the lightsaber ignition sound heralds the coming of the film's title. That's pretty epic, not gonna lie. Let's say you're watching The Phantom Menace on DVD, and after that glorious opening, we then get a cutscene taking us out of space and onto Tatooine for the Mos Espa pod race. You get to take in the atmosphere, awesome music, and a montage of characters from the movie you're about to watch. But that's not all. Let's say you want to skip straight to the Watto scenes because Watto is sexy. So you click chapter selection, and another cutscene takes you to these rocky formations that contain 5 scenes apiece. You want to go to a different set of 5? A cutscene will seamlessly transition you to 5 other rocks. It's insanely dynamic and well thought out. Even the options menu is alive and brimming with personality that fits this whole pod race theme. And there's a cutscene that transitions you into the movie when you hit play movie. Every single one of these DVDs is like this, offering an amazing, well-realized, thematically appropriate menu for a different planet, represented in all 6 of the films. And I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. The coolest thing about these damn Star Wars DVDs that I've never seen any other DVD try and replicate. Let's say you want to show your friends the glory of the Mos Espa pod race menu. So you boot it up and... wait. That's not Tatooine. What? Are we on Naboo? Wait, this thing has 2 different menus? I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. There's 3, actually. Each one of the original 6 Star Wars DVDs have 3 different randomly selected menus that all represent different planets from the movie. The layouts are all fully unique depending on the planet you're on, and they all look incredible. Ever since I was a kid, I have absolutely adored these menus. And for a while now, I've been thinking, aren't some of them better than others? That's what I'm here today to finally determine. Which Star Wars movie has the greatest selection of DVD menus? I'm going to be taking the average of how I feel about all 3 of the selections for all 6 of these movies and seeing how they stack up. I'll also do a little mini ranking of each movie's 3 menus to tell you which one I prefer over the others. Oh, and I guess I'd better address the elephant in the room. Obviously, I conceived this dumb ranking series as a 9-film saga affair, so we can't just leave out the sequel trilogy. Unfortunately, they did not keep this menu trend alive in the late 2010s. Are you surprised? It's amazing they even released on DVD at all. So they'll have to be a part of the ranking, even though, yeah, I'm just gonna tell you right now, obviously they're the bottom 3. They're not even bad menus, they just can't compete with the 6 greatest menus in physical media history, quite possibly. It is worth mentioning that a YouTuber named Sire SW75 actually made these amazing mock-ups of what the sequel trilogy would have looked like if their DVDs were in the same style as the original 6. I would highly recommend checking those out, even though, yeah, obviously that's fan-made content that we're not gonna factor into this ranking. Anyway, let's get a move on. And by that I mean, let's get through the sequel trilogy menus so we can talk about peak already.
Disappointment in the game of life!
The Last Jedi menu starts out pretty promising, with all the characters from the key art fading in as we zoom out and get into our main menu position. I really like the look of the scenes and how they're blended really well next to this key art. It's pretty awesome looking. I can't wait to see what they did with the chapters. Oh. Oh, it's just a bunch of red. Pretty much the exact same as the main menu, but without the characters there. Do I dare look at the setup? Oh, these scenes are just zoom-ins on the key art of Rey, Luke, and Kylo that we already saw on the main menu. I guess that is a nice reflection of how these are the only 3 characters Rian Johnson cared about when writing this movie. But still, what a boring menu setup. It's all very cohesive and every screen looks great in a vacuum, but I like to see variety and different planets represented in the backgrounds, not just the abstract concept of red. Yeah, after a strong start, this menu kind of falters the more you look into it. Tragically, the weakest of the 9, despite having a strong core idea.
This Disney DVD is Disney's DVD.
The Force Awakens DVD menu is not bad in a vacuum. If I had never seen the menus for the original 6 Star Wars movies, I'd probably say, hey, that was pretty good. The main menu takes place inside the destroyed Star Destroyer on Jakku, featuring scenes from the movie in the big window. And these scenes, combined with the exciting swelling music, makes for a pretty dynamic and solid menu. I especially love the way it ends with a shot of hyperspace, as the music concludes right before the menu loops. Also, TR-8R is there. That's pretty epic. The chapter menu is still static images on a static background, but this Starkiller base shot looks nice. And I gotta give it some points for having exactly 50 scenes, which is in line with the 6 Star Wars DVDs of old. Last Jedi decided to go over and have 52. Sure, whatever. The setup image is a decently striking still frame of Kylo Ren. I like how the options are in his hands. That's funny. The languages screen with Rey looks pretty good, and the one with Finn is alright, even though there's a lot of empty space. Surely we could have represented Takodana here, considering how most of these menus come from Jakku. But I'm not going to complain too much. Pretty good menu, but in terms of the best the sequel trilogy has to offer, there is another.
Coming soon to own on video and DVD.
It gives me no great pleasure to report that the Rise of Skywalker menu is my favorite of the sequels. See, I'm not biased. I'll give this movie props when it earns them. Ironically, the main menu isn't really my favorite. The fade out with the characters appearing is just a lesser version of Last Jedi's menu, and the key art for the Rise of Skywalker we see here isn't nearly as striking as Last Jedi's. But I guess the placement for all the scenes is fine, and the music is really dynamic and fitting. Next up is the chapter menu, and hey, that actually looks pretty awesome with all the Star Destroyers in the back. I like the look of this page a lot, even if there are only 44 chapters. Look, I can excuse Last Jedi going a bit over and hitting 52, that's not that off. But come on, you could have squeezed 6 more chapters out of this movie to make it an even 50. Whatever, not a big deal. I also just really like the look of the setup menus. They all represent different planets and characters, offering a pretty varied view of the entire film within just the menus. Yeah, I think this final menu nailed what they were going for with the sequel trilogy DVDs the best. Even though, yeah, it's pretty unremarkable compared to the absolute bangers we're about to talk about. Buckle up. Hey, wait a minute. I just noticed the Rise of Skywalker DVD has a Squarespace bonus feature. Well, hot diggity dog. Let's click on that and hear about Squarespace. Squarespace is a wonderful online website builder that enables you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. I adore how easy they make it to showcase your expertise and engage clients with video content on your website. You can make stunning video libraries and even monetize your content by adding a paywall. Perfect for online courses, exclusive tutorials, and premium workshops. If you want to get discovered fast, that's where integrated Squarespace SEO tools come in. Every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, letting you pop up more often on search engines and attract way more customers. Squarespace also offers lots of built-in donation tools. You can create a professional, on-brand website that makes it easy to accept one-time or recurring contributions and engage your supporters. Use built-in email campaigns and marketing tools to connect with your community and inspire more people to support your cause. Check out squarespace.com/ShayFrillis for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use promo code ShayFrillis to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Return of the Jedi's menus are functional, but somewhat forgettable. There aren't really too many aspects that stick out about them in my mind. You got a solid set of characters: Luke, Leia, Han, Lando, Vader, Palpatine, Wicket, and Jabba. Leaving out 3PO, R2, and Chewie is sad, but understandable. Still, no Admiral Akbar? we get Tatooine, Endor, and the Death Star, with all the main menus being pretty solid. I like the placement for all the character montages, with the Endor one weirdly being my favorite, even though they're kind of just floating up in the sky. It looks really good, I don't know what else to say. I like the Death Star placement, but all the TIE fighters in the back can be a bit distracting. I honestly don't think they were needed. And Jabba's palace looks good as the subject of the Tatooine main menu, even if we get the random ass burping alien alongside it. Not the biggest fan of that guy, but I can live with it. I feel like the chapter menus are where things start to get a little dull though. Like, okay, the Death Star one is awesome. That interface is clean, and it looks great having these rectangular pillars that could feasibly be part of the Death Star interior, listing all the movie clips. Awesome stuff. The Tatooine one being on the sail barge is okay, but not all that dynamic or interesting. It was a good idea, but it makes for a fairly boring looking menu after a while. But Endor though? I mean, it's just trees. Yeah, I know that's what Endor looks like, but there's nothing really Star Warsy about these visuals, other than the clips on screen and the scout troopers that fly by when you're transitioning to a different set of 5 scenes. It's kinda lame, honestly. Endor picks up the slack with a solid options menu where we get to see the AT-ST Chewie's piloting, even if you hear the same audio clip of Han saying Chewie twice in one loop of the menu.
Chewie, get down here!
What's that about? At least the Tatooine and Death Star ones are simple but effective. The Tatooine one is just a visual of Han frozen in carbonite. Not a lot else going on here, but like, yeah, it's a pretty iconic visual. I'm happy with it. And the Death Star is just a view of Palpatine in all his glory. He even says, good. Obviously, both of these had the potential to be more dynamic. Like, we could have gotten something involving the Max Rebo band, or the fight between Luke and Vader. Return of the Jedi generally feels a lot tamer than most of these other menus, and I can't say any of these elements really stick out as the best menu segments in the original 6 films. Even the plain movie transitions, I mean, for the Death Star, it's just zooming into Palpatine. Crazy. The Endor one is also just the shuttle taking off. Pretty whatever. Oh, but you know what? The Jabba one is him pressing the button to send you to the Rancor pit. I actually dig that one a lot. I think I'll rank these menus by putting the Death Star up top, then Endor, then Tatooine. Overall, not a bad selection, but this movie's menus could have strived to be a bit more dynamic.
For you first-time users of DVD...
Phantom Menace. The only one of the original 6 Star Wars movies I have never owned on DVD. Yeah, I've said this before, but when me and Patrick were kids, we did not like Phantom Menace. We liked Attack of the Clones. It had Jango Fett and the awesome battle on Geonosis at the end. But we didn't like Jar Jar because he stinked, and we thought the only part that was cool was Darth Maul. Nowadays, I prefer Phantom Menace over Attack of the Clones, and I even enjoy me a good Jar Jar quip from time to time. But yeah, I still don't own this movie on DVD. I really should though, even if its menus are a bit of a mixed bag. This was the first Star Wars DVD release, and thus, their first attempt at this innovative, ultra cool menu format. So with that in mind, they really came out swinging. The 3 planets you have to work with are Coruscant, Naboo, and Tatooine. Makes perfect sense. Each planet has a slightly unique roster of characters on screen. They all start with Padme, Anakin, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Maul, but then they diverge into a set of characters that fit the specific planet you're on. Yoda, Mace Windu, and Palpatine for Coruscant, R2, Jar Jar, and Boss Nass for Naboo, and 3PO, Shmi, and Watto for Tatooine. Good selection all around, though it is a little weird how it starts with Padme of all characters. Surely Anakin or Qui-Gon would have made more sense. Also, the character loop ends with a shot of Darth Maul igniting his lightsaber. We get it, it's cool, but we already saw him, no need to beat us over the head with it. The Tatooine main menu looks especially neat with the characters being in the stands, and the Naboo one is fine. The Coruscant one is, what the? Why are they so wide? Why do they cut off instead of taking up the entire platform? Graphic design is my passion. Okay, to be fair, the graphic design on the chapter menus are where Phantom Menace really shines. They all look awesome, from these unique conical scenes that wrap around the Senate chamber chairs, to the orb effect as they appear in the Gungan City bubbles. Even though it's the least unique, I think my personal favorite of these is the Tatooine pod race ridges. These look so clean. Unfortunately, the options menus are a bit lacking for the most part. I mean, the Coruscant one taking place in the Jedi Council room is really cool and dynamic. It showcases a different side of Coruscant from the other menus, and you can look at Yarapoof's head bobbing back and forth. Plus, the whole council is here? It's not just the two of you? What about you, Dogface? Did you know it was a council now? Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of the other options menus. The pod race one isn't terrible, but it certainly could have been a lot more dynamic. I like how the language selection text is pink to match the lightning coming out of Anakin's pod racer, but that's about it. In general, I feel like there was more you could showcase than just the pod race on Tatooine. Like, this menu could have been in Watto's shop, or the streets of Mos Espa. They place all their bets on the pod race, and it's cool and all, but not the most varied menu overall. Naboo's options menu really drops the ball though. Instead of showcasing any aspect of the amazing Darth Maul fight, the desperate struggle to retake Theed Palace, or the big boomer battle between the Gungans and the droids, we get a shot of some battle droids, and a hologram appears with all the menu options. What the shit is this? I think they just ran out of time during development to make this option screen. There is no way this was their first choice for a menu taking place on Naboo. The play menu options are pretty decent all around, but mostly just consist of a ship flying in front of you. Not much to comment on here. Overall, I'd say my favorite in this group is Tatooine, since it doesn't have any major issues, outside of not showcasing anything other than the pod race. Next is Coruscant, which would have been the best if the main menu characters didn't look so bad. And finally, Naboo. That awful option screen really tanks this one for me. There was just so many more possibilities. Still, for being the first instance of this menu format, not a bad showing for our old buddy, the Jar Jar movie.
But you need to swap Disc 1 for Disc 2. You see the disc labeled 2?
Attack of the Clones has a mostly pretty good showing, though there's definitely one planet here that isn't exactly pulling its weight compared to the other two. The main menus are pretty good all around. I mean, having the characters be in the waters of Kamino looks a little bit silly. My girlfriend compared it to the puddle scene from West Side Story 2021. Clearly George Lucas was a visionary ahead of his time when designing these DVD menus. It's so silly looking though, that it wraps around to being fun. The Coruscant one looks awesome with the characters inside that electric gate, but the Geonosis one is the real standout with its bombastic music and the sight of the beasts at the bottom of the screen. The character placement is very tasteful and appropriate as well. In terms of the characters who show up, we have Obi-Wan, Padme, Anakin, Yoda, and Mace Windu on all the planets. Then it divulges into Jango, Boba, and Taun We on Kamino, 3PO, Count Dooku, and Poggle the Lesser on Geonosis, and R2, Palpatine, and Dexter Jetster on Coruscant. What an odd assortment those last two planets had. The R2 footage isn't even from Coruscant, nor is the 3PO footage from Geonosis. I don't know, I can't be the only one bothered by that, right? I also think Poggle is such an oddball choice. I mean, I know he's the leader of Geonosis, but he doesn't really have more narrative significance than, say, Newt Gunray. Now, Dexter Jetster, that's fine. On to the chapter menus. I like the Coruscant one conceptually, with the scenes being on these hologram billboards, but when you put it into practice, it just looks a little rigid and tacked on. Maybe if there was a holographic effect on them, it would look better. But as is, it's kinda lazy looking. Kamino looks really cool with all the scenes taking place in these round clone pods. But Geonosis is definitely my favorite of the three. It's on the molten plates from the droid factory. And then when you click on one of the even scene numbers, a Geonosian gets squished on the main menu button. Why was he walking on the droid assembly line anyway? What an idiot! I'm honestly disappointed nobody voted in the Star Wars poll for the Geonosian from the Attack of the Clones DVD menu that gets squished. That's who I would have picked. The Coruscant option menu is initially kinda neat, since it appears when the assassin droid makes a hole in the wall. Once you get over that initial rush though, it's one of the most static and boring options menus of the bunch. Not really a whole lot going on here. I mean, just look at Kamino in comparison. It's a full-on battle between Obi-Wan and Jango. That rules! I also love how the THX optimizer is on this pillar right here. Very cute. And the Geonosis one is pretty simple, just Obi-Wan spinning when he's imprisoned. But that's fun in its own way. I like watching him spin around while I'm debating whether I want English 2.0 Dolby surround sound or not. I also like how Kamino and Geonosis have creatures that attack you when you hit play movie. That's pretty different and fun. Overall, yeah, you might have been able to tell that I'm not really a huge fan of the Coruscant menu. It's focused on the nighttime scene where they chase Zam Wessel, so I don't need stuff like the hologram map from the Jedi Youngling scene or Dex's Glorious Diner to be represented. But there was definitely more variety with Nightlife Coruscant you could have represented, like the bar where Obi-Wan gets some death sticks. I think this might be the weakest menu in the entire entire 6-film saga on its own. But thankfully, Camino and Geonosis are pretty awesome overall. I barely have any complaints with either of them, aside from, I guess, the goofy water people on the Camino main menu. Camino, I think, has the highest high with its options menu, but Geonosis is stronger all around, and it has the funny bug that gets squished. So my ranking of these menus is Geonosis, Camino, Coruscant. At least we get to see Dexter's glorious, sexy face on Coruscant, so it wasn't a total wash.
DVDs and...
If there's one thing the Empire Strikes Back DVD menus loved doing, it was hanging Luke upside down on the chapter menu. Seriously, it's weird that it happened twice, right? All around, this is a pretty strong selection of menus visually. Though, part of me feels like this movie in particular has menus that just get a little too chatty. You're just bombarded with so much dialogue taken from the film on basically all of the menus here. Other Star Wars menus have dialogue too, but they usually dial it back a lot more than Empire does. Part of me just wants to enjoy the beautiful music while I make my selections, instead of hearing Luke say, "We'll find a full of surprises," when he fights Vader at the chasm in Cloud City. He didn't even say that line at the chasm, he said it in the Carbonite freezing chamber, which is already represented. Why didn't you just put it there? Whatever, I'm getting ahead of myself. Our selection of planets is Hoth, Dagobah, and Bespin. And aside from the getting a little too talkative problem, I can't say any of them have any glaring weaknesses. The selection of characters on the main menu is good. Luke, Leia, Han, Lando, Yoda, Vader, Boba Fett, and Chewbacca. No 3PO and R2, but I guess it is more important to get the big new faces in here. Though, Chewbacca feels like a weird one to end on, I don't know. Surely Vader, Boba Fett, or Yoda would have made more sense. The Hoth main menu looks clean, with the nefarious probe droid afoot, and the characters appearing on this rock. It's not the most exciting, but it works. Same is true for Dagobah, with the characters in the swamp water. Not the best, but certainly solid. Bespin, I don't know about that menu. It's not as bad as Phantom Menace Coruscant, but I think they just gotta stop putting characters on landing platforms. Fortunately, Bespin picks up the slack with my favorite chapter select screen for this movie. Watching the scenes from the movie ominously surround Vader, or surround his slow, methodical duel with Luke, makes for a really striking and cool image. It's very stylish and functional. Probably one of the best chapter selects out of any of these DVDs. I also really like the Dagobah one, where Luke is training and the scenes are on the rocks and crates he lifts. That also looks very dynamic and cool, but clean and easy to use at the same time. Then we got Luke hanging around in the Wampa Cave for Hoth. Another clean interface. The shapes the scenes form are kind of cool, but this one isn't really that interesting, aside from watching Luke flail around in the backgrounds. I haven't been too hot on Hoth, but the options menu is really cool. I love watching this AT-AT blast things, and it's awesome how cleanly he fits into the frame with the subtitle information surrounding him. R2 peering into Yoda's hut on Dagobah is also pretty solid, but this is definitely one of the more egregious examples of too much talking in Empire's menus. The same is true for the Bespin Cloud City duel in the options menu. It looks awesome, and it would have been one of my favorites, but oh my god, can you guys just shut up? Don't let yourself be destroyed as Obi-Wan did. Bro, I'm trying to hear the music and also decide if I want the Dankst subtitles or the Norse ones. But to its credit though, Empire definitely has some of the best play movie transitions. The Bespin one, where a cloud car drives right at you, is pretty standard, but the Dagobah one has R2 get spit out by the sea monster right at the camera, and the Hoth one is pretty neat because overall, I think Bespin is my favorite, because in spite of the weaker main menu, the chapter and options menus look great. Then I'd say Dagobah, then Hoth, which doesn't have too many standouts, aside from the options menu being cool, and the jump scare. Overall though, I think they went too far in a few places with the dialogue. And it holds a lot of these back for being true standouts among the Star Wars menu saga. Still, not a weak visual in the bunch.
This is DVD.
I was really tempted to give this top spot to Revenge of the Sith. It was the first Star Wars DVD I owned, and thus, I'm very nostalgic for its glorious menus, since they were my first exposure to the wider Star Wars DVD menu world. Of course, I hate rating anything high because of nostalgia, except for Lion King 1.5. So trust me when I say my fond childhood memories of these menus have nothing to do with their high placement. They just objectively rule, plain and simple. This is easily the most action-packed set out of all 6 movies, perfectly suiting the most action-packed Star Wars movie to date. The main menus are all solid bits of calm before the storm though, and all of them are at the very least pretty solid. I don't particularly care for the Mustafar character montage placements. It looks a little silly just being in the lava there, but it's certainly not awful or anything. The Utapau one is decent, probably the only time they've made decent use of a landing platform for the character montage, but the Coruscant one is easily my favorite. I love how Palpatine is just watching everyone on his screen, like he's a puppet master at work. 'Cause he is! And in terms of the actual characters, we got Obi-Wan, Anakin, Padme, Yoda, Palpatine, Mace Windu, Grievous, and then the Emperor and Vader. A bit unconventional to double dip like that, but I kinda like how we give time to Anakin and Palpatine's Sith alter egos. It really emphasizes the darkness at the heart of this story. The chapter select menus are where things really get awesome. All three of them revolve around lightsaber duels, yet they also all couldn't be more different from one another. Mustafar features Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting in the transitions between chapter screens, with the scenes being nicely represented on the panels in this one room. You know the room. The one from LEGO Star Wars that's gonna collapse unless you use the Force on the pillars. Yeah, that one. Coruscant features Yoda and Palpatine's Senate duel, with the Senate chairs housing the scenes for you to select. That shit looks awesome, and the music really hits. This is easily one of my favorite chapter selects across the entire saga. And the Utapau one throws you right in the middle of a lightsaber clash between Obi-Wan and Grievous. I love the idea, and the even-numbered select screen looks great. I feel like they may have gone too far in a few places with the odd-numbered screen, though. This just looks a little off. It's a bit clunky to navigate around, and the light of Grievous's sabers don't make for the best viewing experience when checking out these clips. A for ambition, certainly, and it's a ton of fun flipping through the chapter screens to simulate a lightsaber fight. But even as a kid, I liked looking at the even-numbered screens a lot more than the odd ones. The options menus are all uniformly excellent, though. Good-ass dynamic action with killer music to boot for all three of them. They all represent different locations compared to the other menus, and they all look sick as hell. I think my favorite of these is Yoda fighting the clones. I just love watching him slowly pick them off. The Mustafar play movie transition is a little lame, the Utapau one is okay, the Coruscant one easily outmogs the other two since it involves the sick-ass I am the Senate spin. Doesn't get any better than that. Revenge of the Sith is cooking with absolute gas. There are definitely a couple elements I can nitpick, like the odd look of half of the Grievous chapters, or some of the visual elements on Mustafar, but for the most part, these guys really perfected this menu system at this point in time. The weakest is probably Mustafar, ironically enough, but it's still top tier in general. Then I'd say Utapau's in the middle, and Coruscant in Revenge of the Sith is probably my favorite single menu in any of the Star Wars DVDs. As a kid, I always got excited to get this one so I could play around in the Senate chamber with Yoda and Palpatine's iconic chair hurling duel. It was a very close race, but as goated as Revenge of the Sith's menus are, there is another that had to top this list for me. Look, I have ragged on A New Hope a lot in the past in these videos. Oh, it has ugly looking water, it doesn't use the color red very well, yada yada yada. But the fact of the matter is, A New Hope has got it where it counts. And that is in its damn DVD menus. These three are basically near perfect. Like, looking at all of them, I was shocked to realize I don't have any major complaints with any of them. Sometimes they can get a little chatty, but it's not nearly to the same extent as Empire. And there's enough variation between talkative and non-talkative menus for it to not matter that much. The character selection is perfect. You got all the essentials, no more, no less. Luke, Leia, Han, Obi-Wan, R2, 3PO, Chewbacca, and Vader. And you witness all these characters on three incredibly clean, fantastic looking main menus. The Yavin one isn't too special, like it looks good with the characters in that rock carving and all, but that's about it. It's good, nothing more. The Death Star one looks amazing though. I love the sight of the characters appearing in that window behind the Falcon. But Tatooine easily takes the cake for having possibly the best main menu there is in Star Wars. Everyone loves a good Binary Sunset tribute. And there's something about the gorgeous music on top of the sight of Luke watching the characters as they appear in the sky that just feels mythic. This is Star Wars, plain and simple. The entire essence of this amazing series can be distilled in this DVD menu from 2004. In terms of the chapter menus, once again, Yavin is a tad lesser than the other two, but the scenes appearing in between the X-Wings and within the Y-Wings still look really good. The Tatooine one is also great, as we get to see the Sandcrawler panels house the movie scenes. This is one of the menus that gets a tad chatty, but it's not really egregious. It's pretty charming hearing Luke ask R5 to follow him. Speaking of which, the transition from the odd to the even numbers is R5 blowing a gasket. And the transition from even to odd is said gasket falling out of the sky and landing in the sands, never to be seen again. That's awesome. But the Death Star chapter select is the true winner here. I love the way the scenes slot into these little crevices of the scale model they used to film this final dogfight. It looks incredible, and the transitions are smooth and exciting. Oh yeah, I love how on the Tatooine chapter select, a Jawa tases you when you try and cycle back to the main menu. Frickin' sweet, Lois. The option select is fun on Tatooine since you get to enjoy the lovely Cantina band music while selecting languages from this hologram screen. The Death Star one is really cool since it's the scene where Obi-Wan turns off the tractor beam. Very fitting pick for the options menu. But Yavin finally picks up the slack here by making the options menu the final medal ceremony. Yeah, it obviously doesn't loop very well, but man, it's awesome to bear witness to. From the visuals to the music. And 2 of the 3 plain movie transitions envelop you in a bright light, which is pretty fitting for such a hopeful movie. Pretty much all around, A New Hope hits it out of the park. It doesn't necessarily have the same exhilarating hype moments and aura as the Revenge of the Sith DVD menus, but there's such amazing visual design and amazing vibes to this movie's menus. I simply don't think they've been topped. Yavin is the clear weakest despite being really good still. Then I'd give it to Tatooine, then the Death Star, but it's an incredibly close race. Just like the race for number 1 between this and Revenge of the Sith. But ultimately, this movie just has no missteps in the menu department, and it boasts some of the most gorgeous ones in the entire franchise. So congrats to A New Hope for being my pick for the Star Wars movie with the best DVD menus. And that's the ranking. Thanks for watching. I had a lot of fun making this one because these menus just tickle my brain. And I really think there is a lost art to DVD menu design now that physical media is largely being phased out in favor of streaming. At least old people like me will always have the memories of these glorious menus to look back on. And I'm glad I could potentially teach the younger generation what we used to have, and how much effort went into the design of these things. Anyway, tune in next time, because I'm sure I can come up with an even stupider Star Wars ranking. Good night, Yavin.